Welcome to LoyalTV. This week in Tulsa, Oklahoma, we peer into this town's checkered past, back when it was a haven for crooks and criminals, and better known as Tulsey Town.
What we now call Tulsa really came to life in about 1836. Then with the Creek people on their watery trail of tears trudged up the hills off the Arkansas River and ignited that last council fire with those embers under what's now called the Creek Council Oak, still standing. That was when Tulsa was born, and it was called Tallahassee. Then that name was changed by Anglos who moved in, and it became known as Tulsey Town. And at that time, it was a cow town. And back on the Arkansas River in those shallows is where they forded the river on those rock shelves to bring the cattle down to the stockyards and the railhead. Well, Indian Territory in general was a haven for all sorts of misfits and outlaws. So this was a safe place to come. Indian Territory was a safe place to come. It was kind of like playing tag and getting on base. In the early days of Tulsey Town, and even after it became a oil boom town, outlaws loved to come here, and they'd get up over in North Tulsa on what's called Standpipe Hill with their spy glasses and look down into early Tulsa to see if there were any lawmen around. And if they didn't see anybody, they'd come on down. Sometimes they'd raise a little dust, but generally they kind of kept a low profile here. And many of them passed through here. Certainly the Dalton boys, and Belle was here a time or two, and even Henry Starr, her nephew by marriage, who was the king of the Oklahoma bank robbers. People fail to realize, and this is sort of a mantra of mine, especially about the American frontier, there were some white hats and there were some black hats, but the vast majority of hats were gray. Wyatt Earp and his brothers certainly wore gray hats. Hickok, gray hat. Belle, gray hat. Maybe lighter gray than theirs. You know, the Dalton boys, when they went up to Coffeyville and got shot to pieces trying to rob those two banks, 3 of them had been deputy U.S. Marshals. They just weren't making enough money. And those are always the best stories, the true stories. By the early 30s, with these colorful bandits, a lot of them from here with colorful monikers like Machine Gun Kelly, you know, and Babyface Nelson and Pretty Boy Floyd and Bonnie and Clyde and all the rest of that tribe. But Charlie Floyd was the best example out of all of them of what we call in history a social bandit. And social bandits appear in this country in antebellum America every time this country has a depression. In the Depression of 1873, we had the rise of the Youngers and the James Gang. Depression of 1893, the Doolins and the Daltons, all kinds of other people. The rich man's depression, as they called it, in 1907 didn't produce any, but certainly the Great Depression, as we called it, which hit this country with a 1-2 punch of depression and Dust Bowl, it spawned a lot of bandits. And a social bandit is one of them that actually becomes a champion of the disenfranchised and the downtrodden. And that's what Charlie Floyd became. He was known as the Sagebrush Robin Hood and focused especially on the banks that were foreclosing on the dirt farmers, on his kinfolk, on his friends. One of his favorite tricks in robbing a bank was not only to get what money he could, but to find unrecorded mortgages and destroy them. This made him fairly popular with someone whose mortgage was destroyed, you see? And so Floyd really fits that title to a T. He was a social bandit. Well, Floyd's real home base, of course, was down in Sequoia County, but he did live here for a while. And places like Tulsa and certainly Kansas City, and over in Arkansas, a real haven for outlaws, of course, was Hot Springs. These were, again, kind of bases where you could go and remain untouched. I would say that you would see an outlaw element here throughout probably most of the last half of the 19th century, well into the 20th century. And in fact, it probably went on longer than that because, as Woody Guthrie cleverly said in his ballad, Pretty Boy Floyd, some men will rob you with a 6-gun and some with a fountain pen. So we still have outlaws operating today in Oklahoma.
Since those days, the city of Tulsa left its checkered past behind and continues to prosper. Come back next week for the greatest stories you've never heard, only on LoyalTV.